Dr. Basile is one of our full professor faculty. He is a senior sustainability scholar here at the School of Sustainability and now the College of Global Futures at Arizona State University. Dr. Basile has an impressive background ranging from private consultancy with massive enterprises, also having built large organizations and consulting organizations based on the fundamental premises of sustainability that really are incredibly well known the world over. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Basile here in our institute and school, helping us think about large enterprise organizations and also things like transformational sustainability leadership. So you're getting a faculty member here who, yes, also teaches a sustainable enterprise class. That's one of your 300 level opportunities here in the school. But it was also formulative in building our executive masters of sustainability leadership. So to this day, Dr. Basile still holds joint appointments in many places. He's literally like a rocket scientist by background. It's stupid crazy how smart this guy is. He's currently coming to us from Southern California, beaming in. He cycles, he's smart, he's been involved in a lot of things. He knows all the players from back at the day. And we've asked him to join us today to tell a little bit about his background, to share a little bit about his work in sustainable business and enterprise. And also there are things, even his son has inspired him from things like sports and leadership of sustainability that have given him interesting ideas and perspectives. We also just asked him to share what's on his mind. Dr. Basile, good to have you here, George.
It's awesome. It's awesome to be here. It's always great to talk to some of our future students and, get a chance to share with you guys some of the things that are going on. And frankly, as Colin said, if you have specific questions, really do feel free to speak up or put them in the chat. This is a great time to learn more about the school, about sustainability, about why now, why you, what else, how does this all work, etc. So really don't be shy, because this is a great chance to do that. So I'm very happy to be here and happy to help with anything I can.
What's some more of your background? So you've been kicking butt in this field for a long time. Where did this all start for you?
Yeah, so back in the day when we rode dinosaurs to work and sailed the 7 seas, this all started for me actually, probably where it started for some of you folks on the call here and professional peers, where you are, you just look around and you sort of scratch your head and you go, well, how is this going to work? I mean, when I was a little kid, you guys, there was already a lot of talk about things like animal conservation was especially a hot topic, looking at the oceans, looking at life in the oceans, worrying about animals being wiped out around the planet and whatnot. So there was a lot of concern, especially around sort of interacting with nature. And as a little kid, like kindergarten little, I didn't see how we could really wipe out the animals on the planet and still have it work. It just you got little kid logic, right? You're like, how could that work? And you're sort of like, we're an animal, so. And I went and asked I kind of did a little survey as a kid, sort of poking around with the adults, like, how does this work? And I was stunned about how little the folks around me seemed to know about what was going on and how these animal populations worked. So early on, I got a little bit of a dose that maybe we don't know what the heck we're doing. To a certain extent, even if you're smart and you're good and you want to do good things, there just wasn't a lot of knowledge. So that led me, combined with really being a curiosity-driven person, to studying science, really. So I got, Colin said a lot of things. I got my undergraduate degree in physics, and then I went to Berkeley and got my PhD in biophysics. And I did it because I loved learning. I mean, the cool thing about a field like sustainability, you guys, is there's just aha moments left and right. There's so many systems to study. There's so many things to put together. So many things that kind of are rocket science. We can talk a little bit about that. What's the rocket science in sustainability that doesn't have so much to do with math and things like that? It has to do with just sort of thinking sideways or new and just blows your mind, which at least for me is like a real thrill. I was really studying the hard sciences with the idea that I should really know how the world works in order to help work on some of these big challenges. And in the world of physics, you study really how nature writ large, what are the laws of nature? And in biophysics, you ask, how does biology work in that bigger sphere? And it's a really good place to start. One good place to start with sustainability. The challenge and cool thing about sustainability is it really asks you to sort of dip your toe into almost everything, you know, economics, psychology, biology, history. In our sustainability and enterprise class, one of my things I really love is beginning the class by taking a quick political economy tour, trying to answer the question, how did we get here? Why isn't renewable energy, for example, like solar, why isn't that just a brilliant idea that everybody's like, yes, why don't we already have it? Well, we can answer that, right? We can answer that. And the answer to that helps you then figure out how to get it. So my sort of personal journey here was a little bit traditional because the field of sustainability didn't exist the way we talk about it today. There was environmentalism, there was social justice and whatnot, but people hadn't put social and environment together really. Ideas like climate change were even more unheard of. And we published some papers that used the idea of sustainability as a way to be successful, right? Rather than thinking about, oh, I'm gonna run a business and try to be sustainable. We said, if you start with wanting to be sustainable, what would a business look like? What would an organization look like? So we use sustainability as a way to think about being successful. And when we published those papers, a bunch of big companies said, hey, this is really interesting. So McDonald's and IKEA in Sweden, eventually Home Depot, Bank of America, Nike, a bunch of these companies were like, that's really interesting. And so I suddenly found myself with one foot in kind of the university, as Colin said, building these ideas out, and one foot consulting and working with real world companies, because the laboratory for sustainability, you guys, is the real world. When you get done here, you're going to be able to think big thoughts, understand systems and integrate them, but then bring them to real world opportunities and make change. Or if you're an entrepreneur, bring it to what you want to do and do that sustainably. So hopping off aside a little bit, the degree in sustainability is not about just doing sustainability. Just like when I got my undergraduate degree in physics, if I had 100 different lives, I certainly could have just been a physicist. I loved physics, I could have done that, but I never planned on that. I planned on using my degree in physics as a platform to launch from. The sustainability degree is a great degree to launch from. You will bring that with you. You can build on it, you can use it. So if you want to start up a business yourself, or you want to go and be part of government and policy, or you want to be a school teacher, or you want to be a farmer, you know, whatever, you can bring this way of thinking, this critical way of thinking, the systems knowledge, so that you can be part of building a sustainable future and leading towards a sustainable future, however you want, you know, in whatever guise you want to sort of do that. And that's different. So one thing led to another, and, you know, I ended up having, like Colin said, this constantly one foot out there doing stuff, which was sort of funny. On one of my first big projects. So 2 stories. One of my first big projects, I was working with a biotech company, working with the CEO and the CFO, the chief executive, the chief financial officer, the head of strategy, giving my talk. And the CEO raised his hand like we were in 3rd grade. I'm like, yes, Mr. CEO, yeah, you have a question? And he's like, yeah, exactly. He's like, how did you get in here? And I was like, okay. So I realized we had to have, like, you know, this was radical new stuff. I mean, he was like, these are crazy ideas. On the flip side, when we were working with Home Depot early on, 2 really interesting things happened. First of all, in the very first meeting, we were with really the board of directors, right? All of the heads of the company and the board of directors. And a lot of the senior managers. And as we were talking about the challenges they had, this is a company that sells 25% of the timber in the US, 25% of the wood products in the US. They have hundreds of thousands of suppliers. I mean, they're a giant home development company, right? And working with them, we started to get this idea across that, you guys help people change their rooms, their lives, their buildings, the places they live. Why wouldn't you help them do that sustainably? And they're, yeah, why wouldn't we? And the challenges were really quite grand. So I realized very early on, so this is, 15 plus years ago, I realized that the field of sustainability has great value in the existing world. Like, here I was, I had a degree in biophysics, which is super impressive, but the guys in the room are running a $50 billion a year business. What does a guy with a degree in biophysics have to really tell them? I mean, that's a valid question, but it turned out somebody in the field of sustainability had a lot of useful information, including the chief financial officer at the time. We were going through a visioning process using sustainability principles as the tools. And we got through there's sort of these, 8 sustainability principles. We got through the first one, we got to the second one, we got to the third one. And he looks at the third one, which is basically you should get your natural materials from sustainably managed areas. So think about these guys buy a lot of wood. They should get their wood from sustainably managed forests. That, if you want to be sustainable, makes sense. So he's like, aha, we're working hard on that. And he's getting all excited about all the things he's doing. But then he looked at another sustainability principle, which is you really shouldn't be making compounds that just build up, are persistent, and then throwing them everywhere. That's just pollution. And he realized, he's like, oh my gosh, part of our forest strategy is reducing the amount of timber we're getting from places that aren't sustainably managed, but we're replacing that timber with new products that we're making out of persistent compounds, out of these long-lived plastics. And guess what? We're literally going to sell them and distribute them so people can just use them and throw them away. He looked at me and he's like, we're trading off one problem for another. And then he looks at me and he goes, do you know how much money we're spending on that? And I'm like, no, I don't know. No. So that was another example of where I saw early on that sustainability really can help you build, the future businesses, the future enterprises. And frankly, wouldn't it be great if the future chief executives and the future, presidents of the United States and the heads of the United Nations, whatever, had this knowledge so that they could be the ones saying, hey, we're making these trade-offs, and we're doing that. Long story short there, I sort of went from this academic background and moved into this sort of dual applied, really working with folks, and then came back to ASU to bring that to the school,
Before I do that, is anyone here got a question that they want to ask Dr. Basile real quick?
Yeah, I see one from Sarah on the chat line here. Yeah, Sarah, that isn't, so Sarah asked for, for everybody, is it basically different in different places around the world? And the short answer to that is exactly what you would think. Absolutely. It's not only different in different places around the world, it's different in different states. It's different in different cities, right? We've seen this with like the Black Lives Matters, what's going on with COVID. Look at what's going on with COVID today and how tough it is to get a uniform policy of saying wearing masks. And you could just go like, oh, well, these are right and these people are wrong and these people are good and these people are bad. We all know it's much more complicated than that. People have different perspectives. They have different, what we would call cultural norms, right? So they have different attitudes and behaviors. They have different stories, right? Narratives, the stories you tell yourselves, the story that are told around you. In America, we have a strong story of, the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness and rugged individualism. In Japan, where I've worked a lot, there's much more a story of let's do this together. You can't get anywhere just by yourself. So individualism in Japan looks more like, as weird as this sounds, much more like a team effort from the very beginning. Same thing with Sweden, where I've worked. So, and this is fun. So a few things that are about this question that are actually fun. So does it make it more challenging? Yes. Are there commonalities that you can count on? Yes, right? People around the world are different, but they're also the same, right? Everybody wants to see, their children have a better future. I have found in general that actually most people around the world are quite nice and want to have a sustainable future. That it's not a hard sell. There's a lot of business commonalities around. What's cool though, is you also get to experience the world from a bunch of different perspectives, which at a personal level, it's just mind blowing. Like when I work with the Japanese folks, it is such a pleasure to try to put myself into their universe and ask to not be just an American, but to be an international human. And you get such positive feedback and you learn so much. And it opens up new ways to do things that you wouldn't have ever thought of, which brings me to the next point. And it's fun that we have an international school. ASU has an enormous student body. If you graduate from ASU, it's like afterwards, you can literally go into any room in the United States and go say, hey, ASU. And I guarantee you somebody will be like, I went there, my cousin's going there, my aunt told me, whatever, right? The cool thing about that is different in different places, and sometimes easier, like maybe policy in Europe is making certain things easier than the United States, but it goes in waves, is having the different perspectives in your classrooms at the university and bringing it with yourself all adds up together, to like 1 + 1 = 3, right? The sum is more than the parts. And it's really fun. You get to bring your personal life experiences, whatever they are. For example, right now, I would argue in the world, women don't have the leadership platform and voice that the future needs. So just being a woman and coming into our program and positioning yourself to be able to articulate for different communities around the world, different communities in the US, your thoughts and your experience will be part of building sustainable futures. So the whole diversity thing is not theory. It's not a should have. It is a must have for this field. And the flip side of that is you get to bring your real you and share it with a bunch of other people who are sort of, excited to go about that. So that's a great question, and absolutely. So let's see, Cheyenne has another one here. How do you deal or talk to people who disregard climate science? I've dealt with many people who don't believe it and turn their nose up at it. Well, it's a great question, and it's a general question. You could actually say, how do you deal with people who they wouldn't ever use the word sustainability because it's not necessarily a word that's, it's sort of like people don't use the word physics very often, but physics is everywhere. People don't use the word biology very often, but biology is everywhere. So you could say, how would you talk to somebody who disregards physics or disregards biology or disregards climate science or disregards sustainability? So all fields have this, you guys. This is not only sustainability, even though, we may be sensitized to it. And the answers certainly depend on the people, but the number one thing I've found is start with listening. Start with finding out what are the core stories that the people you're talking to tell themselves. What are their stories of origin, right? What are their stories of success? What matters to them? Colin mentioned this sort of framework I often use in my courses. I ask, what's your system? Like, who do you care about? Your friends, your family, your business, your community, the future, the past, what does success look like to you? If sometimes it's a set of things, but most of the times when you drill into it, it's like, well, success looks to me like, I've got a bunch of friends and I'm happy and I'm making enough money to do what I want to do. So I get to do what I want to do. Once you know those things about a person or an organization, you can find those out about organizations. Those are the pathways into having constructive conversations with them. Sometimes it won't open up all the doors because they may have narratives that they're telling themselves, like, for example, the narrative around climate science that breaks down trust is climate scientists want there to be climate disaster because that's how they generate their research money, by pushing forward that fear story, and therefore you can't trust climate scientists because they have a vested interest in a negative outcome, in climate going bad. So if somebody's telling a story to themselves where experts aren't trusted, and you come at them with expert and a set of facts, I'm the expert, you should just listen to me, you're going to fail. That kind of person you need to come at with, well, what do you trust? Oh, you're a member of this church, or you're a member of this community. Well, are there some leaders within that organization that are saying things? Or how do those organizations explain complex ideas? So that's the first half of it. The second half is, as a sustainability professional, as somebody who gets a degree in this field, at a certain point, you do get to bring out your expert ideas. You have your own narratives. You don't have to always get everybody to agree with you. That's okay. If you think about leadership, there isn't typically 100% agreement on any big complex topics. So the other thing is to not fall into the trap that getting people to move around something like climate or getting real action means you have to convince everybody in the world of your exact thoughts or that this matters. If you look at any complicated topic, you're going to find out that there's usually probably a lot more agreement than one thinks, but there's plenty of discord. And the courses and whatnot at ASU, this is a great question because communications and what is at the heart of what we do. And so many of the courses and the curriculum helps you to work on both the questions Sarah brought up and Cheyenne, you brought up. And again, those are skill sets independent of sustainability, independent of climate, being able to work with people from around the world, being able to work with people who have different ideas, being able to bring in expert knowledge in ways that is functional and useful and leads to action. That's the kind of person you want in a room, no matter what, right? That at the end of the day, guys, if you do sustainability right, you can be the person that people want to have in the room, even if sometimes you're telling them tough news, right? Because you're trusted, right? And at the end of the day, people in general, they respect that, frankly, around the world.
Great job framing. You get everyone jazzed up. This is why we wanted you here. And honestly, guys, George is a world leader in this. Bananas. What are you doing? You mentioned your transformational and your enterprise class. So, what do you teach, and how do you think that empowers these students as a change agent?
Yeah, just so everybody knows out there, I know there's a lot going on out there in the world right now that looks catastrophic with COVID, and in the United States, the cultural upheaval around Black Lives Matters and these, what seems to be, these different islands of ideas fighting with each other and whatnot. That's also a sign of when times need to change and adjust. And if you go back in history, you'll see that that's very common, and it isn't disastrous. It often leads to great success, and it leads to great opportunity. So I would say right now we're at this inflection point. You guys are coming into this field at a point where we have a lot of knowledge, we see a lot of impacts, and if we do it right, it can lead to a takeoff. And so I have a ton of things going on with big businesses in the plastics industry, in the retail industry, in the food industry, where they're like, how do we do the future? And they're really serious because they're like, we don't think this is going to work this way. I also have work going on with very small organizations that are experimenting with brand new models for ownership and business and whatnot. And we have courses and curriculum that are built around all of these things in food systems and energy and behavior and institutions and communications and whatnot. So I just really think even in the midst of all of what's going on, it's like this call to action, and we really need people who are both excited about the complexity and willing to do the hard work to understand it and the harder work to actually engage with it and take action. So I know it may look crazy out there, you guys, but all I can say is with my 20 plus years of experience in this one, like 30 plus, almost now, it's an amazing time to enter this space. There will be real need for you guys, and I really look forward to helping you guys succeed in any way that I can here, anywhere else. The fact that you're here on the call and have voted with your feet and everything to just be in this, you know, kudos to you and thank you very much.
George, awesome, man. Thank you so much. Really, so George is an amazing faculty. In addition to joining us today, like the other folks, and if you've heard from folks previously like Scott Cloutier, and you've joined us on a previous call, our job at this school is you. Like, chips are in the middle of the table. We are all in for you. Our job is to empower and support you to become the best change agent possible. So Dr. Basile returns emails. He meets with students. He counsels and guides them, whether you're in his course or not, right? So like, we care about you out there changing the world, which is a really big deal. Dr. Basile, I want to thank you for your time, as we have for each of these Hangouts.
All right, thanks you guys. Look forward to seeing you when we get to finally see each other.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Dr. Basile. Be well.